I think the word prioritization is obviously very important. It has to prioritize spending, which means focus on what is essential. And I would start with relief to the poorer households and ensure that there is adequate relief to the small and medium enterprises. But then move on to how do you get the economy back on track? And clearly, one of the best ways the government has of getting the economy back on track is, doing the spending on infrastructure, much of which is done by state governments rather than central governments. So getting the money out to the states is quite important. This is the wrong time to starve the states, but making that kind of push, ensuring that the government has paid all its bills so that the liquidity goes back to companies who can use that for investment. Those are all aspects of what the government needs to do. So where does it cut? Well, it has to find places to cut. Typically, it starts with, okay, we're not going to use as much paper in the printers. Those are low ticket items. You have to find out, bigger places you can cut. But the greater sort of source of reducing the deficit may be in selling assets. And one of the things the government promises every time and defaults on is, selling government companies. They call it privatization. Nothing really has been privatized. What you've done is share sales. But even that, look, you just started this program saying the census was hitting 50,000. Where are the share sales? You should be selling shares, from every rooftop if you are in a tight constraint. Why aren't we doing that? What is it that is holding back? And my guess is we made some progress, but I would want to take advantage of high prices. If I could, I should have had these on tap to sell. But so more infrastructure financed by share sales and so on, and getting the infrastructure spending out through the states may be easier than getting it all done by the center. Those are things to consider as we go forward. Clearly, reforms are important, but we have to do them in a way that doesn't prompt a reaction, which means much more thought going into them, much more consultation, and much less of a my way or the highway.
So there are two big sources of revenue. One is the tax revenue and the second is the non-tax revenue. My view is with reference to direct taxation and even indirect taxation, we need a stable tax regime. And what we have to hope and believe is that growth will give us some of the higher tax revenue. So that is one part. As far as where is the money on the non-tax revenue, time has come for us to really dramatically up the gears in our game on privatization. We should be bolder to say time has come to look at privatization in addition to disinvestment. Let it get the kind of focus which we saw in the Maggie Thatcher era in the US, where it was driven with a strong sense of purpose to transform the British economy from the challenges it faced. Can we go with a passion and a vigor to really go out there and monetize our assets in the right manner and a right process? Third is the huge amounts of land which government and quasi-government entities own. Why can't we find ways of monetizing that? Next is gold. The amount of gold India holds is mind-blowing. It's amongst the wealthiest nations in the world in terms of what amount of gold we hold. Therefore, between privatization, monetization of various assets owned by government and quasi-government entities, as also the whole area of gold, these are just some of the ideas where we can use non-tax revenues to significantly boost the question which you asked, where is
global growth, of course, for 2021 is projected to exceed pre-pandemic levels, but that's only because we're starting off a very low base, which is a historic collapse of a estimated to be about 3.5%. If you look at the statistic I like to look at is where would the world have been in the absence of this pandemic and what's the gap to be closed. That unfortunately doesn't close even until 2025. But again, we certainly are at a better starting point in this year than we had expected in October. And indeed, we do have upgrades for India.
And foremost thing is that today country is looking for about 300 million ton of production, steel production by 2030. Many projects will come, and there is a declaration by Government of India and Finance Minister that for the new projects they are going to give the relaxation in terms of taxation from 25% to 15%. So what we are expecting from government that for the brownfield projects also such kind of SOPs should be available, because if you go only for new expansions, that means more load on the and more burden on the ecosystem. You have to acquire land, possess land, you have to have railway network, waterways, and water pipelines. So this is going to be a huge load on the ecosystem. It is easier to go for the brownfield expansions than to go for the new projects. This is one. Number two, we would like to request to Government of India and to propose them that the maximum income tax rate should not be more than 25%. Today, the worldwide, the developed economies are calling Indian non-resident Indians to come and to settle themselves over there so that they can generate employment. Some of the countries are issuing green card just for the 5 people who employ in their country, and they are giving citizenship if you have 10 or 12 workers or the employees you hire in their country. So I think Government of India should invite all of the HNIs and all of the NRIs to come and to start there some commercial institutes or MSMEs or something like that, so that the employment generation can take place. Last point, the Indian Railway will have to come in a big way as far as the new railway tracks are concerned. Water pipelines have to start so that more and more steel consumption and cement consumption can be put in, and so are the other infrastructures like bridges, roads, and basically the track system. So if you see the Chinese, they have declared more than $3 trillion of project post 2020 February. I think if not $3 trillion, the Government of India should do at least $2 trillion at the moment. And more projects, if they come, then more and more economic growth will be there, employment issues will be resolved. And we like that immediately the Indian railway system should come into action, and all 17,000 trains which are there in the country should run on the Indian track, so that the movement of the people from one location to another location can take.
Government shall hold minimum 51% of the share capital of public sector banks is under the relevant laws under which they are constituted. Public sector banks, which are called nationalized banks, are not companies under the company law. They are corporations established under an act of parliament. And there are 2 nationalization acts, one of 1970 and the other one of 1980. And the public sector banks were converted into corporations regulated by that new law by passing those laws in 1970 and 1980. They are not governed by company law.
Okay.
So the concept of holding company and subsidiary company, all that to be made applicable, it will be necessary that these 2 laws are repealed. The banks are converted into companies.
Okay.
And the the provision relating to minimum shareholding of 51% by the government will have to be modified by referring to that such shareholding shall be held by the new corporation to be established.